Hey everybody, welcome to CCC's online service. I'm David Robinson, the senior minister here at Community Christian Church, and wherever you're tuning in and however you're tuning in, I'm just really grateful you're tuning in. Thanks for spending part of your day in this way. These services, online or otherwise, they are a significant piece of our connection with God. And on this final weekend of August, we're smack dab in the middle of the 2022 installment of our CCC at the Movies series. It's where we take some popular and recent movies and we use them as a springboard to have a biblical discussion about faith and God and the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's a great way to articulate biblical truth. And that's essentially what we're doing in this series. We carefully select the movies we focus on, and we pick up on and receive and reinforce the biblical truths that are put on display in real compelling and real memorable ways on the big screen. And we also do this series, don't miss this, we do this series because it's a whole lot of fun. CCC at the Movies is a whole lot of fun, and I indeed hope you're having a lot of fun with it. In fact, each time we gather for services, whether that's online or in person, I hope they're wildly enjoyable for you while being incredibly helpful at the same time. And I hope you're sensing God's presence in your life these days, and that you're more assured of the love of God for you right now than ever before in your life. The Bible has this great little prayer in the first chapter of the book of Ephesians. I want you to check it out. The Apostle Paul, he prays this prayer, and this is what he writes. I keep asking that the God of our Lord Jesus Christ will give you wisdom and discernment so that you may know Him better. I love that last phrase. So that you may know Him better. And that's what I'm praying for you this week and as we wrap up this month, that you would come to know God and His Son Jesus Christ better and better and better and better, and that would just make all the difference in your life. So thanks again for being a part of this. I hope it's a really, really helpful part of your faith, and it's exactly what you need at this time in your life. Who knows? It might just be the highlight of your week.
Sometimes sorrow is the door to peace. Sometimes heartache is the gift I need. You're faithful, faithful in all things. In every high, in every low, on mountain tops, down broken roads, you're still my rock, my hope remains. I'll rest in the arms of Jesus, come what may. There is deep joy that you give to me. What hurt needs healing is a holy thing. I see goodness, your goodness in all things. Yeah, in every high, in every low, on mountain tops, down broken roads, you're still my rock, my hope remains. I'll rest in the arms of Jesus, come what may. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. The Lord is my shepherd, leads me to still waters, and He restores my soul. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Oh, the Lord is my shepherd, leads me to still waters, and He restores my soul. In every high, in every low, on mountain tops, down broken roads, You're still my rock, my hope remains. I'll rest in the arms of Jesus. In every high, in every low, on mountain tops, down broken roads, You're still my rock, my hope remains. I'll rest in the arms of Jesus. Come what may, come what may, come what may, come what may.
Welcome once again to Community Christian Church. My name is Nick Cox, and I am super excited to be here because I love CCC at the movies. Now, I'm officially a guest speaker here, but if you've been around here for a little while, you might have seen me, speaking before. I was a full-time minister here at CCC for about 7 years before shifting over to doing marriage and family counseling full-time for about the last 9 years or so. And I really do count it an honor to be able to teach every now and then. But when it's CCC at the movies, I really love this series. I take it as a personal achievement to make sure that I speak because this series is so much fun. The focus of CCC at the movies is to use recent and current movies as a place to start a conversation about our lives, our faith, about God, because it turns out that some deeper truths tend to find their way onto the silver screen. The reality is that movies and TV have become a primary form of storytelling in our culture, and humans have always used storytelling as a means to wrestle with deeper parts of our existence. Plus, who doesn't love a good movie? Now, the movie for today came out about a year ago. It made about $330 million worldwide, so not too shabby. It stars Ryan Reynolds playing, Ryan Reynolds in a movie called Free Guy. And in case you missed it, here's the idea of what's going on in this movie. We're introduced to Guy, played by Ryan Reynolds, who is this optimistic, positive bank teller who spends day after day in the exact same way in Free City, wishing that he could kind of have this uneventful life be a lot more like these super cool sunglasses people that are around the city. And every day is pretty much the same until Guy runs into the woman of his dreams. Then everything starts to change for him. And the next time someone robs the bank he works at, which is a daily experience for him, he stands up for himself. So he confronts the robber and takes his sunglasses. And then Guy puts on the sunglasses and he sees the world in a completely different way, in a way that all the players of the video games sees it. Because it turns out that Guy is an NPC, a non-player character in an online multiplayer video game. He is essentially a computer-programmed character in the game. So no one is controlling him from out in the real world. And the woman of his dreams, who he later finds out is called Molotov Girl in-game and Millie in real life. And she drops this hard truth on Guy. He isn't real. He's a part of a video game that's going to be shut down. But there's something different about Guy, and he starts to gain this self-awareness and this consciousness of his own, so much so that everyone outside of the game, they just assume he's a human player, not an NPC. And Guy interacts with other NPCs, and he starts changing the game from the inside out. As Guy decides he's not going to be like the players in the game, but instead, he's going to be a good guy of the game. It's really a fun movie. There's lots of Easter eggs about other movies or video games. The movie is, it's honestly like a mix between Groundhog's Day and Grand Theft Auto, right? Guy is such a likable character, and the movie does a really good job of balancing the stress of this in-game kind of over-the-top artificial violence with what's happening kind of in the real world. And there's a whole different story that's happening in the real world and what's going on, but it's not really relevant for our purposes today, because who I really want to focus on is the character of Guy. Now, a couple of quick warning labels about the movie. This movie is PG-13, and I think they use every single ounce of that rating. I mean, honestly, I bet if they used like one more word, it would have pushed it right into being rated R. And they do that thing where like someone's about to say something and you get the first letter out or the first sound out and then they cut away. It's like, we know what they're going to say. And there's a good deal of language. There's some sophomore humor. There's some innuendo, right? It's a Ryan Reynolds comedy. So if you've seen some of his stuff before, you have an idea of what to expect. But there's a really solid heart in this movie. With the character of Guy, we have a person who is a background character in his own life. He's completely unaware that he exists inside a video game. Every morning he wakes up and he greets his goldfish and he eats the same breakfast and he watches the same news with the same information and he puts on the same outfit and he gets the same cup of coffee and goes to the same job and faces the same struggles over and over and over again. Every day is just the same. Until one day, he metaphorically wakes up and realizes that there is so much more going on around him than he could have ever imagined. That there's this entire world that was always there, but that he couldn't see it, but he was right in the middle of it. I think a lot of us can identify with where we find Guy at the beginning of this movie. Right? The same thing over and over again. I don't know about you, but there are some times where the days just sort of blend together, the same routines, the same patterns, the same responsibility, the same struggles. I have to cook again. I just cooked yesterday. And Guy is able to maintain this sort of ignorant bliss about it all. But I think most of us struggle that when we feel like we're on this hamster wheel of life and not go anywhere, that's really hard. I think we all know to one degree or another what it feels like to be almost sleepwalking through life. The same things over and over. And in the process, we can lose out on a sense of purpose and significance. It reminds me of a story from the Bible about this guy named Jacob, found back in the book of Genesis, the first book of the Bible. Now, Jacob is a fascinating person in the Bible, and he's not the kind of character you would expect to be at the forefront of God's work. Now, in this movie, Guy starts off as this overwhelmingly positive, optimistic, encouraging character. Jacob, well, not so much. Jacob is a crook, and he's a swindler. Jacob's father, before he died, he was going to pass on a blessing to Jacob's brother Esau. And Jacob knew there can only be one blessing, and it was intended for Esau, so he impersonated his older brother in order to trick his father, whose sight was failing. And this isn't like an accidental thing. Jacob planned the whole thing out with his mom to very purposely steal the birthright that wasn't his. He is conniving, and he's sneaky, and he's a thief. Right? In the movie, Guy decides to be a good guy. In the Bible, Jacob, not so much. Now, as you can assume, when Esau finds out what's happening, that his birthright's been stolen, he is none too happy. So Jacob skips town, kind of avoid his brother's wrath. So not only is he a thief, he's also avoidant of accountability, maybe a bit of a coward. And this is the hero of the story. So Jacob, he's on the run, and we read this in Genesis 28:11. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head to lie down to sleep. Jacob is on the run to avoid consequences of his choices, and he gets so tired, and he's running in the sunset, and he takes a stone nearby, and he uses it as a pillow. So here we have Jacob, exhausted from his run, maybe exhausted from some of the guilt, just sleeping wherever he can find it. You see, up to this point, Jacob had really only ever known one type of life. Trying to scrape by, trying to survive, trying to do whatever he thought he needed to do to look out for himself. It was the only life he knew. It was the only one that he was ever taught, right? Just like Guy in the movie, he had only known one way of living. And also like Guy in the movie, it was all about the change. You see, while Jacob was sleeping, God came to him in a dream to reinforce the promise God had made with his people. And Jacob had this amazing dream, and God shows him angels going up and down from heaven. And he reminds Jacob of this amazing promise to be with him, the same promise God had made to Jacob's father and grandfather, that their descendants would cover the earth. God reinforces with Jacob, this scoundrel and this thief, God reinforces with him that this promise is offered to give him a purpose and give him a plan. I am with you. I will watch over you. I won't leave you. These are deep and powerful promises. And then Jacob wakes up. And I wonder what that moment was like. I've never had a vision from God or a dream from God that I'm aware of, but we get a little clue of what Jacob was thinking because we read this when he wakes up. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. And Jacob wakes up, and everything's changed. It's like when Guy puts on the glasses in the movie, and all of a sudden, the world around him looks so very different. And Guy realizes that the entire world right beside him this entire time, except he just couldn't see it. And Jacob opens his eyes from this amazing dream and he realizes something he didn't before. God is in this place. I didn't realize it. God was here all along. When he walked down the road, when he picked a stone to lay his head on, God was already there. You see, that's the real heart of the movie, and that's the part of life of Jacob that I hope we can really focus on if we are mindful enough to see it. But unfortunately, most of us are living lives of distraction. We're sleepwalking through life. And like Guy and Jacob, it's just the same thing over and over and over again. And we are not awake to see what is right in front of us. And Jacob opens his eyes from the dream, and Guy slides on a pair of glasses, and there it is, what has always been just out of view. And Jacob learns that God was already there working before he got there. And the invitation of today, and what I hope that we can learn from this movie, what Free Guy can draw our attention to, is that we are called to wake up from our sleepwalking and pay attention, because God is already here working in our regular lives and in our everydays. We are invited to awake from our sleepwalking. God is here and I didn't know it, Jacob said. Can you imagine God being right there the whole time and you miss it? I mean, how can you miss God if he's right there just one step away? But I think we do miss God. I think we miss him all the time. We are one step away and we don't see it. Just like Guy was always one step away from seeing that he was in the middle of a game. And maybe we don't see it because we think we're disqualified from being near God. Maybe we think our past struggles or our past mistakes, maybe we think that the presence of God isn't for someone like us. But let's not forget who the hero of the story is. Jacob is a crook. He's a bad brother who swindled his father. In almost every definition, he was a failure. Jacob blows it in almost every way that you can think of blowing it in life. And not only does God not disqualify him, God chases him down to gift him a vision and a reminder what has always been true, the amazing promise and purpose of God on his life. And God didn't show up when Jacob woke up. God was there first. Jacob woke up to the fact that God was already there. God did not show up when Jacob woke up. He was waiting to be seen in something very common. I think it's a great prayer for God to be with us, but sometimes I wonder if a better prayer would be to pray for our eyes to see where he has already been, because he's been there all along. When we pray for God to be with us, we are praying for something he's already promised. Jesus told us, "And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." God already promised to be with us. We don't need to pray for or to earn God as already promised. We need to wake up to the reality that God has been working all along. And it's ironic that Jacob couldn't see God until he went to sleep. It wasn't until he rested and closed his eyes that he allowed God to open his eyes. And remember, what was Jacob sleeping on? Jacob took a stone to be his pillow, which I can't imagine, by the way. I'm a little picky when it comes to pillows, especially when I travel. You see, I have one of the least impressive diagnoses in the entire world. It's called droopy eyelid syndrome, right? It's a real thing. My eyelids are too loose. So when I toss and turn, like if I have an uncomfortable pillow, my eyes get irritated because they don't stay closed. So I would not do very well on a pillow made of stone. But Jacob sleeps on a rock and he wakes up with new eyes. And he's like, that was amazing. That was incredible. And we read this. He was afraid. This experience with God, he was afraid. And it's amazing how often fear is at the start of something new, even something new that's good. The first step is often through fear. Fear, if we let it, can draw us to the next step we need to take toward God. And Jacob was afraid, but that fear was quickly followed by excitement. He was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. This is amazing. Can you believe it? Surely this is the house of God. Surely God dwells in this place. This is the gate to heaven. This is the way to draw near to God." Because he was so excited about this experience and this realization that God was there, Jacob pours oil on the rock. So we read in verse 18, "Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he had placed under his head and he set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it." Right? Jacob takes this rock, this normal, mundane rock that he had used as a pillow for himself, and he pours oil on it. And pouring oil on something in the ancient world was a way of marking it as something special, of consecrating something, like a king or a prophet might be anointed with oil as a symbol of being holy or chosen. So Jacob takes this rock pillow, he pours oil on it and says, "This is the house of God." But God doesn't live in a rock, but he can. Jacob says, this rock is the gate to heaven. And now notice it is Jacob who says this is the gate of heaven. God doesn't say this, Jacob does. God doesn't say this is some sort of like magical rock. This is the gate to heaven to Jacob because it is the means in which God used to get Jacob's attention to the things of God. Was the rock special? Nope. It was a regular, basic thing. Something he would have seen over and over again on the side of the road, something ordinary and trivial and mundane. It became something blessed and holy and a way to be closer to God because it was God used to open Jacob's eyes to reality that God was there working the whole time. You see, Jacob goes to sleep on a rock and wakes up with new eyes to see the work of God. And he looks at the rock and says, this is the gate to heaven. This ordinary thing that God has used to draw me closer to him. In the movie, Guy is just going through the motions. He is a backup character in his own life until one day he is invited into the bigger story and he sees the bigger picture and all of a sudden everything changes. He is invited to see the bigger picture of what's happening behind the scenes. He is invited to make change in his world. And Jacob poured oil on the rock and he made the rock a monument to the work and to the promise and to the purpose of God. You see, that rock was for Jacob the gate to heaven because Jacob gave it a purpose that allowed him to see God, even in a rock. What about us? If we believe what God says, that he was here working before we were, that he was here working before we even knew it, and that he will continue to work whether we see him or not, if we believe the promise of God to be with us, even to the very end, then where are we looking for him? I suggest we need to find him in the same way Jacob found him, in the mundane, ordinary moment of our lives. I think we can sometimes be fooled into thinking we need to experience something amazing or powerful or earth-rattling in order to see God in our lives. But I think it is much more possible God wants us to use the regular and ordinary to let us see him. How about in your work? Your everyday work, the people you sit next to or have meetings with, or the bosses you report to, the customers you serve, in the normal mundane moments of your life, what would happen if you view them as the gate to heaven because God is there working before you even opened your eyes? I wonder what would happen if the next time that person at work that's a little challenging, maybe a little annoying, there's maybe a little hard to work with, the next time they come up to you, I wonder what would happen if you just smiled and whispered to yourself, this is the gate of God. This is where God is working. And the frustration of your work responsibilities and the tasks and the annoyances of your everyday life, if you were to say, this is the gate to heaven, these moments, this is the rocky pillow God is using to help me see him. This is the gate. This is the place that draws me near to God's presence. How about our families? The interactions we can have can be so hard sometimes, so challenging, so easy to lose our tempers in. When our kids are little and they aren't listening, or when our kids are older and they aren't listening, or when our parents aren't listening. I wonder what it would look like if we just slowed down in those moments to remember this is the gate to heaven. These are the moments when I am invited to see God working. Students, you're about to go back to school into the busyness of another school year. God is already at your school working. When you go to school, God is already there. So how are you going to see the tasks and the homework and the assignments? How are you going to manage your relationships? This isn't about waiting until you're some kind of adult age before you can do amazing things. The Bible and history is full of people who changed the world at the very age you are now. If you can wake up and see his presence in your life. How about in your marriage and the challenges and the pet peeves and the disappointments? This is the gate. God is near. God is at work here in these moments. They matter. In every place in our lives, we can give it the purpose and allow God to use the small, normal moments of our lives. Frederick Buechner is an author and he puts it so beautifully when he puts it this way. Listen to your life. See it for the fathomless mystery it is, in the boredom and the pain of it, no less than in the excitement and gladness. Touch, taste, smell your way to the holy and hidden heart of it, because in the last analysis, all moments are key moments, and life itself is grace. We are often so tempted to look backwards at our mistakes or forward toward our anxieties that we often miss out on the moments of right now, this moment, this day, this season, to see the amazing work and purpose of God. God is moving, and he was moving before we even woke up. And notice for Jacob, it was a rock that was a pillow that God used to grab his attention. The source of the discomfort becomes the very means that opens Jacob's eyes to God's presence and God's work. I think so many of us are looking for a deeper sense of purpose. I know I often am. Because you see, when we lack purpose, when we can't see the point of our lives, or if the everyday things we go through, it's just simply hard to ignore when it feels like we're over and over and over again just sleepwalking or daydreaming through life. There was this study I read about one time, and I thought it was pretty interesting. A sociologist had a friend who ran a museum, and the person running the museum mentioned how difficult it was for them to retain security guards, which they didn't understand. It was a decent paying job, and it was as easy as standing around and making sure no one touched anything. It seems like a pretty easy gig, so they didn't know why people tended to quit after a month or two. And so the sociologist came up with a plan to see if they could make a difference. And what they did is they offered some short training sessions to the guards about the artwork that was around where they were stationed, and they gave them some tour guide material to hand out, and they told them to feel free to interact with any of the people that are around the displays. And this injected the guards with a sense of meaning and significance and purpose. They weren't simply standing around wasting their time. They had a meaning to what they were doing. Where are you seeking meaning and purpose in your everyday life? I invite you to look. It might not be where you expect. Maybe the way you serve your kids, you need to be reminded that this is the gate. The way you show kindness to people who disagree with you, this is the gate. God is at work. The way you offer your patience to people who haven't earned it. I wonder what it would look like in our lives if we woke up every day and prayed for God to draw our attention and to open our eyes to his presence. I wonder what it would look like if every time you got frustrated, you slowed down enough to remember that this might be a stone pillow God is using to remind us of him and his ongoing work in our lives and world. I wonder what we would see if we asked God every day, show me something you want me to see. Never let me forget your constant presence. We've talked about some of these books here before at CCC. If you're looking to invest in this a little bit more, maybe read about this more, a couple of books that might be really helpful. One is called Practicing the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence. Now, another is called The Remarkable Ordinary, How to Stop, Look, and Listen to Life by Frederick Buechner. I actually love anything Buechner writes, but this one specifically applies to today. Either of these books are going to give you some more specific ideas and reflection on what it looks like to be more fully present in your own life of the work of God, instead of just daydreaming through it or distracting yourselves out of it. I don't know specifically what this looks like for you to find a sense of purpose or an ongoing reminder of God's presence, but we have to try. Again, Buechner is so eloquent with this when he writes, the place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meets. Go find it. In the movie, there's these special sunglasses that allowed God to see everything differently, to see everything in the way that stripped off that top veneer to see what was really there. For Jacob, it was a bad night's sleep on a rock. What are you going to use to open your eyes and see God working around you and in your life? To step into this invitation of living out God's purpose for you. Every week during service, we slow down and celebrate communion, whether it's at home or whether it's in person. And if you're not used to it, that might seem a little odd. There's music and there's teaching and there's prayers, but why communion each week? Well, one of the reasons is because we need specific and routine times to pay attention to the presence of God in our lives, in our world. We need moments when we can regularly kind of shake ourselves awake. And in communion, we eat a piece of bread and we drink some juice to remember the body and blood of Jesus given up for us. And if we let it, each time we celebrate communion, it's a chance to turn our eyes toward God. This is written in the Bible about our relationship with God. It says, wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. That is my prayer for us and for today as we celebrate communion.
Well, we've come to a time that we call communion. It's where we reflect on the incredible love that God has for us. It's a love unlike any other love. It's a perfect love, the Bible says. And it's what we all really hunger for deep down inside. And it's available, like it's accessible to anybody who wants to experience it. because of Jesus Christ, because of his sacrifice and death on the cross, and then his resurrection from the grave. Because of that, we can be connected to and we can know the great and satisfying love of God. So if you have some bread and juice, get that together now. And take the bread representing Jesus' body that was given for us, and the juice representing his blood that was spilled for you and for me. And just spend a few moments through communion thanking God for the tremendous opportunity to know and rely on the gift of his love.
You are with me, right beside me, always present, always close. Blessed assurance, oh, be my vision, my firm foundation, oh, remind my soul. If the flower knows your love and the sparrow has enough, then I know that I still have a song to sing. The same God who parts the sea is the God who's here with me. I know you won't let go, you never let go. I know you won't let go, you never let me go.
Why should I worry if you are for me? You hold the world inside your hands. My joy and sorrow, peace in the breakdown. God of redemption, you turn it all around.
You turn it all around. If the flower knows your love and the sparrow has enough, then I know that I still have a song to sing. The same God who parts the sea is the God who's here with me. I know you won't let go, you never let go. I know you won't let go, you never let me go. You are holding me close, you never let go. You are still in control, you never let go. You are holding me close, you never let go. You are still in control, you never let go. You are holding me close, you never let go. Sparrow has enough, then I know that I still have a song to sing. The same God who parts the sea is the God who's here with me. I know you won't let go, you never let go. I know you won't let go, you never let me go. You never let me go, you never let me go.
Well, I hope this time has been an encouraging, helpful few moments together. Let me wrap up with a couple of things to be aware of. One is a reminder of the opportunity to give financially in order to be faithful to God with whatever He's entrusted to you, as well as the opportunity to support CCC and our focus of helping people find their way back to God. You can give online through the CCC website. It's a real simple, convenient, safe, and secure way to go about giving tithes and offerings. You can even text CCC White Marsh to the number on the screen, and you can give that way. I'll also ask you to fill out the CCC card online. If you got a prayer request or a question, or you want to take a specific step, the card is definitely the way to go. And finally, I encourage you to make your way on out to CCC's in-person services on Sunday morning. Next week is the final week of CCC at the movies, and it's our Animation Sunday week. You don't want to miss that. And then we're not only launching a new series on the second Sunday of September, but it's also a Food Truck Sunday. And you don't want to miss that. It's going to be a blast with a bunch of food trucks and inflatable games and free stuff and a whole lot more. So there you go. Hope you have a great start to your week, and I'll see you soon.